I am here with Heidi Wassini from Denmark, a country so close to ours, and yet we know so little about it. So, Heidi is a very esteemed TA leader over there. She's part of the Resourcing Leaders Network. She ran TA for Vivinio, Telenor, and several other companies, which I'm completely forgetting right now. Pandora was one of them. I know you worked for Copenhagen Airport, you worked for EY. Welcome, Heidi.
Thank you very much. I'm so pleased to be here and a little starstruck, like I said.
Yeah, no reason to be starstruck. No reason to be starstruck. We'd love to have you here. Um, so we're talking. We're talking today because you replaced the resume at several of your companies with something else. Can you tell us what you did, possibly for who, and how that turned out?
Absolutely. I have been an advocate of taking away the application many years, even before ChatGPT, because I just did not see the value of it, like you very well know. So the first place I got the opportunity to really do this in scale was when I was working at Telenor. The situation was this. They had done a complete remake of the application process for customer service. That had been a huge success. By the time I came in, they wanted to do something similar for all the shops, all the stores that they had where they were, selling mobile phones, etc. So they wanted to do a different way of recruiting for that as well, and they wanted to look at what they had done at customer service because that had been a huge success. When I looked at it, I felt like we could do that maybe differently and a little bit more modern than what was proposed. So I ended up with some other people who can do personality trait testing, but in a gamified way. And they had already done this for some other clients as well, and I was quite intrigued by that. Um, and then what we did together with sales department was define the best top performers, trying to figure out there is that small window between somebody who's really good at selling, but also really good at advising. Because usually if you're really good at selling, you're not necessarily good at finding out the customer need. And if you're really good at finding out the customer need, you're not necessarily very good at selling. So we had to find that sweet spot in personality trait. So we tested the top performers within all the stores across the country. Then we made a baseline on that. And based on that, we took away the CV, we took away the application, and we just asked them to answer this test, basically. Based on that, the hiring manager would get some questions that they would then interview from. And what actually turned out was that within the first 6 months of doing this as a pilot, sales went up by 50%. And that was before we put in any new training. So we know that the effect was from the recruitment process.
Wow, 50% more sales just by looking at your top performers and mimicking basically the main psychological traits, the main
Yeah.
characteristics they have. That's really good. And this is front end sales staff in stores. Wow.
Yes.
And I think you have another time you did it as well, right?
So another example is when I went to Pandora. Pandora is a jewelry store. So one was telco, this is jewelries. But the concept was the same. We needed to find a way to recruit more efficiently, faster, better match, better fit, so that we had more engaged employees that would stay longer and perform better in the stores. And basically the exercise was the same. We would test the top performers. We would do a baseline profile based on that and then recruit from that. Having candidates just do the gamified tests. And I know I left the company before I knew the complete result, but I do know that it was way better than what we did in Telenor. So I know that it was more than 50% increase in sales by the exact same exercise.
It's really amazing. Now, the first thing I'm curious about is if you can remember this, do you know if they were the same traits or because selling telecom equipment and selling jewelry might have some differences. Do you remember that?
Yeah, so the times I've done it, because these are just the sales oriented one, I've done it for security as well, which was different traits. So basically, it's about finding out what works in one setting and then another. And I think this is where diversity comes in, because some people might be afraid, oh, then you're only hiring one type of person, but you really are not. You're hiring all types of people, but we know that these particular three skills, they share, or five skills. These particular 3 to 5 skills, or competencies or traits, whatever you want to call it, they share across whatever background they have. So they're still different people, but we know that this in particular they're good at in this connection.
But do you remember if the skills differed from Pandora to Telenor?
They do slightly. Some of it are the same because it is an extroverted sales oriented, but due to the culture, due to the nature of what they need to sell, due to understanding customer need, the level of selling, that will change. So it will change slightly, or the level of the competency in one setting needs to be higher than the level in another setting. So
Yeah,
let's say in one setting, for example, in Telenor, you needed to be a 3 on one scale, but then you need to be a 5 in Pandora, just to simplify it.
yeah. I remember actually years ago I spoke to an agency who did actually car salesmen in Southeast Asia, and they were able to not just on the brand, but also the brand in different countries, because the a Mazda is something different in Thailand than from
Yeah,
Singapore, and they were also able to increase sales by using those tests for between 30 and 50%
yeah,
on even car brand sales. So yeah,
yeah,
it's really interesting how those things
yeah.
make a small difference. You said you did it for security guards as well. Same methodology or um,
Same methodology, finding out, well, kind of, because there's not like top performance within security, but there are some traits that are necessary for people within security that we know. They need to be very good at following rules. They need to adhere to rules and legislation. They need to be engaged by doing repetitive tasks, stuff like that. So in order to ensure that the people we got through the pipeline were more fitted for the role, we would define which competencies or which personality traits are the most likely to succeed in the role. And then by that, and honestly, the idea I got way back when I heard it had been done in banking, because they could not find customer advisors in banking because they were looking for the same kind of people all the time. And then they used the personality trait test, and they found out that these people shared it in common, and they started hiring people from all kinds of background and not just banking, and they outperformed actually the people in banking. So talk about transferable skills as well.
yeah. Now, I think our viewers would like to know, how did the hiring managers react? How did you get hiring manager buy-in by getting rid of the CV? That's probably the most difficult thing in the entire process.
Yeah, but I think as long as you take it away from the start of the funnel, so it's not that you do, but then once you invite them in, you have the CV. But a lot of the times the CV does not matter in these kind of roles. I have done different things for specialists. We can talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But for roles where it is more important who you are than what you've done, this is where it will work. And that's why I also believe that you can take away the CV with no consequence whatsoever. And of course, it was a change. Everything is a change when you work with it. So you need to have conversations with them. We had a recruiter who had a very, very good working relationship with all the hiring managers, with all the stores. So they already trusted him. So we were doing this together. The head of, or the director for sales, the VP for sales, was 100% behind this. So we had both from top down and from bottom up. So there were different places and different ways to convince people.
So what did you do for more the specialist hiring then?
So that I have not done in scale yet. But I did do a couple of things when I recruited to my own team. in Vivinio. So one of the things, the first time I recruited to my team, I did a personality trait test and a case. I was testing out a new company that were doing case-based hiring. So we started out with that. No CV, no nothing. The only thing I knew was their personality trait profile and how they solved the case. And based on that, I picked 5 people. 4 of them I would never have picked in a million years because they did not have the background that I thought would be necessary. So one had a communications background, never worked with recruitment. One, this was for a scale up. Vivinio had just entered into a funding phase with the biggest Series D funding in Danish history. So we were on a scaling journey and a fast one. And one of the applicants was from the state. And if I had looked at his resume, I would have looked and I would have thought, working for the state versus working for a scale up. And before that, you worked for a very traditional headhunter. I don't think that that would be a good match. But he was the guy I ended up hiring, and he was a smashing success.
Yeah, this reminds me of one of the most famous Dutch cases in this part, Samir, who also joined actually in this case, the city of Rotterdam as a recruiter with no experience, also because in his case, cognitive tests showed him he was the best
Exactly.
and he aced the interviews. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that might be a very good lesson to learn if you want to try this. As a head of recruitment, you're a hiring manager yourself. So the only hiring manager you need to convince is yourself to try it on one of your own
exactly.
jobs.
Yeah, but that's what sometimes I feel like sometimes you have to take your own medicine. You have to be aware of your own bias. And I really realized how biased I was when I was doing it because I felt handicapped like everybody else because I was so used to looking at the CV, the application, okay, I was okay with that because I had the case, but not having the CV in the selection was so difficult. And the second time I did it, I was more encouraged, so I wanted to try something completely different again. And because this was a tech company scale up, I wanted recruiters who were also open to trying different things. So I actually tested the recruiter also through the recruitment process. And one of the things I changed, I did the same thing with the case, did the same thing with the personality trait, but the way I did it this time with the personality was I had them answer 10 guys avatar, which is uh, uh, an online, yeah, you probably know it, but for the people who don't know it, it's a robot. So basically, you're having candidates interact with a robot. Um, and I was very curious about how they would take that and how that would actually go. But since I could listen to all the answers afterwards, I listened to all the 30 plus 30 people who answered this, and that's how I made the selection together with the scoring from the AI. And the interesting part here was the person I ended up hiring, again, I would have deselected her again because of bias. The first day she was there, she absolutely smashed it and found people for a role we'd been struggling to find for a month and a half.
Yeah, no, to be human is to be biased,
Yeah,
and none of us are immune to it.
exactly.
And sometimes even though we deal with it so much, we might actually think we're above it, but we're not.
And we're
All
not.
right, just wrapping up here. What would you advise recruiters who want to look beyond the CV, maybe amend the CV? What's the process that you're like, this really works to look beyond just the CV and your bias?
Yeah, I think the first thing you need to understand is just like what is possible within your organization? What can you get through with? And a lot of the time, just taking away the application shows the hiring manager some new stuff. And then really having that close interaction with the hiring manager because if you don't have their trust, they're not going to try new things with you. I think it's also very important to get top buy-in, have executive suite or whoever is in top. You need to have them behind you in order to do this just change. And then I think very practically look at some of the tech that's out there. If you don't have the money or the budget for that, do it simple. Just put in screening questions, for example. Look at skills first or personality, or do some situational judgment questions. There are many ways where you can do it very pragmatic, low cost, and still make a difference for the people who apply.
All right. And on that note, thank you for your time and your wisdom.
Thank you so much, Buzz.